Good evening. Welcome to the Wyndham-Raymond School District Board of Directors meeting. It is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025 at 6:30 p.m. We're in the Jordan Small Middle School gym. May I have a roll call, please?
Sue Accardi.
Here.
Jessica Bridges.
Here.
Jody Carroll.
Here.
Marge Gavoni.
Here.
Matthew Irving.
Here.
Joe Kellner.
Here.
Grace Levitt.
Here.
Christina Small.
Here.
Ginny Woodman.
Here.
Maggie Soul.
Here.
Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any adjustments to the agenda?
No, we don't have any adjustments to the agenda tonight.
Okay, next item is public input, but seeing as our public are presenters this evening, we're going to move on to superintendent's report.
Good evening, everyone. Happy Wednesday. Happy Wednesday before Thanksgiving week. A couple things that I want to share tonight. First of all, I had a chance to go and see Grease last Friday night for their opening night. And one of the things for the very, very beginning of the show that Rob Juergens, who has directed those shows for years, kind of read the stats for the show, and it was pretty impressive. So I had Rob send them to me because I think it'd be important for the public to hear what goes into one of these shows. So first of all, this show has 193 costumes. Each of the students participating were involved in 125 hours of rehearsals. There are 153 props in this show, 57 set pieces. It took 50 hours to paint all the different sets and prop pieces. There's a car in the show. It's a 48 Mercury, 60 hours to build the car that's used. 75 students participated in Grease, and if you get a chance to see the show, the stage is filled with students. Absolutely amazing. 100 plus light cues and 16 mics that were used throughout the event. So just a wonderful, wonderful community opportunity. It does play this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday afternoon, and it will close on Sunday afternoon. And if you've ever had a chance to attend one of these shows, the part the public doesn't see is that as soon as that last cue is done and the curtains close, that set is struck. And it usually takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and everything is put back, and it's like nothing ever happened, and that show is done. So it's a pretty impressive process, but if you've not had a chance to go see Grease this weekend, it'll be taking place Wyndham High School Performing Arts Center. Tickets are available at the door for that. Something else I just want to make the board aware of, and the community will be aware of this Friday, is I'll be sending out my annual snow day letter. Looking at the calendar this year, looks like we'll be doing 5 regular snow days before we get into remote days. And remote days are days in which we're providing instruction. Administrators and teachers work together to provide those. But on those days that are just traditional snow days, they are traditional snow days. They're made up in June. The reasoning for the 5 is that prevents us from going in one more week into June, so avoiding a weekend, and allows our students and staff to be able to end the school year in a timely manner. So that will be going out this Friday, and it also counts in there what we do on 1-hour delays, 2-hour delays, early dismissals, all those different pieces for the community, for them to be aware of that. I'm not sure, board members, if you saw this in the news yesterday, or maybe the day prior, it was yesterday. On Tuesday, the Federal Department of Education announced a plan to disband portions of the Federal Department of Education. And why it's relevant to us is that we receive 2 major funding streams through the Federal Department of Education that are funneled to the state of Maine. One being Title I for disadvantaged students, which looks at and helps support in our district early literacy, early math skills, helping those students who need a little bit of a boost. So those different programs are going to be shuffled to other federal agencies. So for instance, Title I programming will move from the Department of Education to the Department of Labor. Special education at this point looks like it will remain under the Federal Department of Education. We've not heard any plans yet as far as whether or not that would be transferred to another department. Early learning will be housed under the Department of Health and Human Services, and Indian Education, which applies to districts further up in the state of Maine under the U.S. Department of the Interior, and if we receive additional information for special education. Again, why that's important to us is that we receive about $500,000 in funding for Title I, and we receive close to $900,000 in special education funding through the federal government. Those represent real people in real positions and real funding, and we're always concerned about timing, when we receive funding, whether or not things will continue to flow, and whether or not mechanisms have been set up under these federal agencies to approve the grants, which then go to the state of Maine, which then flow through to us. So as more information becomes available, and whether or not all these different items continue and stick, we'll keep the board updated on those individual pieces. A couple other things that wanted to point out for the board. First of all, on your tables tonight, there is the updated copy of Maine School Law and Practice for board members. It's a great resource if you have questions about whether it be state statute, federal statute, or even policies and procedures for how you handle things like student behavior, expulsions. All that's covered within the book. It's a great guide. It's a great resource for board members. That's for you to take, for you to keep. And if there's any time that you have any questions about anything that you're reading in there, please reach out. Happy to share or get you in touch with the resources that will help you with that. Lastly, I just want to address with the board and address with the public something that has been a nuisance for us in RSU 14, which has been, we've had several fire alarms over the past 3 months. And those fire alarms have been specific to our propane detectors. And my initial thought when we had 2 of these early on in the year that especially were happening at Wyndham High School, that these were propane detectors that were original to the building back when it was built 2003, 2004. That's not the case. The propane detectors that have been installed, and facilities had a chance to talk about this last night and spend a little time with Bill asking some questions. They were installed in 2024. They are industry standard. They are what are in many, many school districts around us, including the Gorham schools. One thing that we have learned from our manufacturer is that these little detectors, and if you ever have a chance to go in the schools, into one of the labs or the kitchens or the boiler rooms, which have propane or gas detectors, they're located near the floor, so they would pick up any sort of residual gas. What we've learned is that these detectors can also, over time, become saturated with other chemicals in the environment. And the best way that I can explain it is that they get a plugged up nose. So they don't breathe well, they're not pulling in the chemicals and sampling the air like they did before. And when they do that, instead of reading an error or saying that there is a basically it's somebody go and check it out, it defaults to setting the alarm off, which for a publicly occupied space and any sort of gas detection is not necessarily a bad thing for that to happen. But what we've also learned now with working with the manufacturer is that these detectors should be recalibrated every 6 to 12 months. And part of the recalibration process is to burn off any materials that have built up on the media, and then to reteach it what 0 is, and then what 25% of a propane level in the air actually is. So last night, all of the propane detectors on the Wyndham High School campus, so Wyndham Primary, Wyndham Middle, Wyndham High School, which there's 22 alone of them in the science labs at Wyndham High School, they were all retrained, they were all recalibrated. We have some other ones around the district that are also natural gas and not propane, so our alarm company has ordered, you have to use sample bottles that have natural gas in them to reteach them. And so those have been ordered, and they'll be going around to take care of that. I just want to say thank you to our students and our staff. Wyndham Primary had one that went off yesterday in the kitchen. Kitchens are areas where you do have lots of materials and baking and cleaning and all the other things that happen. But kids were absolutely outstanding in that particular evacuation. The fire department was great to work with. Quickly turned the kids around, determined that there wasn't anything present in the environment, and were able to get kids back in school very, very quickly. We will continue to work through this process. The other thing I also learned is that we had a previous generation of these gas detectors that were installed by a previous company. We had 0 issues with them. And so I don't know if we got a bad batch or if there's some newer technology within here, but we've now adopted a 6-month protocol for retraining, and we will see what happens with it. But certainly not what we want to have. It's certainly not what we want to have happening in our schools or to the disruptions that we want to cause. But again, having plenty of detectors that are constantly sensing all sensitive areas and making sure they're in working order it's just a good life safety practice for us to have. And I think that's what I had for what I wanted to share tonight.
Next item is board roundtable. Marge?
Okay, we did have our PATS WRVC, which are our vocational schools, meeting on November 13th. Okay, first meeting was Westbrook Regional Vocational School. It was very interesting. They had 3 Tech 2 electricity students, which means Tech 1 are the kids that go in the morning. That's when they're juniors. Tech 2 is when in the afternoon class, and those are seniors. They're in they're almost to the end. Sorry. They were there. They spoke about the benefits of the program and how they are working towards their licenses. They are presently wiring the new house, which sounds very interesting, and they plan on continuing their education when they leave to become either master electricians and also to own their own business. They were very passionate about their studies and really enjoyed being in the electricity program. It was very, very interesting to listen to these 3 students talk about and they, believe me, have some very, very big plans when they get out of school and continue on. Some of them were going to college, others were going into the trade straight out. Next, WRVC showed us a newsletter. This is brand new for them, that was generated by their student ambassadors with updates on all the different programs that PATS runs. that Westbrook runs, sorry. They also, we looked at the bylaws and everything, and in there is how they replace or how they move on equipment they know or tools they no longer need. And as you know, the programs down there, they have trucks, they have backhoes, they have a lot of large pieces of expensive equipment. So new equipment and selling of old equipment was an update on it. So they are now presently purchasing a new front loader, and to help pay for any new equipment, they are trading in or selling their old equipment. There is no plan as of right now to go to the sending schools for any Part 2 funds. As I think we've had discussions on it, is Part 1 has been taken over by the state. Part 2 is when is what we all shared in, all the sending schools, and that was for capital. That was for the capital, and we haven't done that. It's been a few years now that they haven't asked us for any of that, and that's why you'll see it come up in the budget, and it'll come up as a 0 because we would still be responsible for that. Recruitment of future students is ongoing. They have just done a new video that they've put together, and they're planning on doing visits to all the sending schools with it. In fact, it was funny, I noticed on Facebook today on their site, they had a whole video company in there. They were starting to really showcase their programs. The recruitment will start in the December-January timeframe. They were very proud to let us know that their attendance rate is over 98%. You get the feeling that the ability to attend these programs is what brings these students to school to finish their high school education, and that is the feeling we also got for the 3 students that were there. They couldn't talk about enough what would have happened to them if they didn't have the opportunity to go down to vocational schools. Second meeting was PATS. Again, there is no request coming for Part 2 on their programs. And they went in, let's see, they had to go to the Maine Department of Education for a comprehensive school review, and they're waiting for the report, and once they get it, they will give it to us, and it'll be in our minutes in a future meeting. As I mentioned at our last meeting, there was a discussion on a candidate for the HVAC, heating, ventilation, air conditioning, teaching position, so they can bring the program back, and they are confident this will happen shortly, but because of the time frame, because it's getting later in the year, they're not sure of the exact start date of the program. which is going to be great, well, for next year's students anyway. There was a discussion on dual enrollment credits, and basically it revolved around having the credit show up on student transcripts that are sent to the colleges. And SMCC credits are presently on most of the school transcripts. Steve Jen from one of our counselors was there, and I think he said they are showing up on our student scripts when they go. So there is a lot of concern about our ability to recruit female students in Building B. As we know, Building B is where most of the trade programs such as welding, automotive, electricity, and plumbing are located. This year there are only 26 females, so females in trades is shrinking, and more focus needs to be on why and how do we improve them attending, and that's something the schools are looking at, the vocational schools. Bottom line, there is still a stigma about, and this is from them, and I agree with them, there is still a stigma about attending trade schools versus going straight to college, and that is an issue that both our vocational trade schools and the sending schools are trying to overcome. As we know, people working in the trades are getting to an age where they're retiring, those businesses and occupations are becoming available. After all, where would we all be if we didn't have electricians, carpenters, plumbers, etc.? And as usual, I will send the full minutes out when I receive them, and I know they come really late. But we're actually getting them before they're approved, so that's not a bad deal.
Anyone else? Okay, we can move on to committee reports. Finance.
Sorry, wasn't quite ready. The Finance Committee met at Central Office on November 10th, 2025. Everybody was present. First topic we went over was revenue expenses through October. As a reminder, our fiscal year starts in July, so a little more than a quarter through that. Notable pieces, and I won't read all the minutes for everybody, but the first bond payment for this year was processed on November 1st. That was for $2.35 million, and it was paid out of state funds 100%. The revenues so far this year are as anticipated. The towns are paying their portion, and state funds are coming in as we expect. As we continue to update the board on this, we'll tie some of this back. There was a request to tie it back to the warrant articles to prepare ourselves a bit better for when we get into the budget conversation, so I look forward to that. We received an update on the middle school spending, high level, on time or ahead of time and under budget still, and that seems to be on track. The site work will, of course, wind down through the winter, so we'll see less of Shaw Brothers there, but Landry French is certainly going to town on building. We're still working on the infographic. We had a pretty good draft review at the last meeting. There were a couple of suggested changes. Hope to get that to the board very soon for circulation to the general public. And as a reminder, that infographic is designed to help better inform the public and ourselves about the budget process, where revenues come from and where expenses go, and how that looks year over year, and ultimately what the cost is to the taxpayers. One of the items we had on our agenda was an update on our solar consortium credits. So we're part of a large consortium, and we, as part of being in that consortium where we agree to buy electricity through it, we get rebates year over year. So far this fiscal year, or the first quarter, there were rebates that totaled just under $36,000. And then in addition to that, renewable energy credits for just over $33,000. So it's a pretty nice return on our participation in that. And not to mention our electricity rates are very favorable through that consortium. So that's a good thing. We got some education on insurance and how the district buys insurance. For the benefit of the board, statutorily, we're required to put out an RFP for an insurance broker every 5 years. The last one was done in 2024. Our broker, however, will shop and look for competitive rates on our insurance plans every year with the exception of pollution. Next time, we'll kick it off with a capital reserve update. Our next meeting, which anybody is welcome to join, is December the 9th, 2025, 9:30 at the district office. Thank you.
Facilities?
Okay, we had a facility, as Chris mentioned, we had a facilities meeting last night, and he has already covered part of our discussion, which was about what's happening at the schools with the sensors. Thank you, Chris. So we started off the meeting with a site walk at the new middle school. I would suggest that board members make arrangements with the superintendent to go on a site walk. The progress is unbelievable, and the view from the upper student pods is amazing. You know, it's one thing to go in and see a brand-new building, but it's another to go in and see the infrastructure of the building before it does not look like that anymore. So if anybody gets a chance before this building is complete, I know it's going to take a while, but time goes by quick, I suggest you try your hardest to get down there. And it has the best view ever, and I don't care what side of the building you're on. It is unbelievable. You can ask Ginny, you can ask Christina. It was wonderful. Next, we basically talked about the middle school construction, and so Chris and Bill gave us an update and a design plan on the maintenance storage building. You want to talk about that just a little bit?
Sure. To just, we've been so focused on the new middle school. One thing that we forgot is that, well, not forgot, but one thing we don't often talk about is there is a storage building that's going to be down there as well. Long-term storage, as well as all of the maintenance equipment and mowing equipment for the new facility and for district. Part of that facility, and board members, you voted to approve the initial payment to Morton for some of the building component, but the town of Windham has contributed $250,000 to that building project, and that was part of the agreement that was struck for trading the Andrews School property. Was the $250,000 because that was our storage facility, and the 10 acres of property that make up part of the new middle school site. So we received those two, but we anticipate breaking ground sometime in June, July, and that building will be up and running and ready to go for the opening of the school. And just some of the architectural components, it's made to look like a barn because we have one nice barn on the right side of the facility. There'll be a barn looking structure on the left-hand side, but we'll also meet some of the equipment needs. For those of you who've been at Windham High School, there's the old steam building in the back, which has a bunch of equipment located outside. All of that will be moved inside to the new facility, and that building will still serve the Windham High School campus. But good progress on that, and the Facilities Committee had a chance to take a look at some of the plans for that structure.
Great, thank you. Next, we talked about the Manchester drop-off loop and storage building. The parent drop-off loop and final paving of the bus staff parking area should be completed next summer, depending on the progress of the town sewerage plant. We've known all along that this was going to be dependent on them being completed in the spring, late winter, early spring. If that does not happen before the summer, this will move out a year. Sorry, everybody. In addition to the drop-off loop, Bill is in the beginning stages of designing a small garage for the site to accommodate the grounds equipment on site. As we all know, with all that's happened over there and all of the space there, there is equipment that's going to be needed there that wasn't needed there before. There is a sidewalk where we didn't have a sidewalk before. We have a lot more fields than we had before. So it's become a necessary thing that we have storage for those places. And it is 30 by 10? 15, and it will be shared. It's over, I don't know, for those of you who know where the garden is there, it's going to be beside where the garden is, and there was a small shed there before, and a small portion of it will be for the garden, and the rest of it will be for the grounds equipment. Next thing we talked about was the playground update. As previously reported, a subcommittee was developed to evaluate the present and future needs of the playgrounds at each school. Manchester had the highest need of all the schools, so schools are working on action plans for their playground needs. The new middle school play areas are being addressed by the building committee, so as updates become available, we will keep the rest of the board involved, and that's all of them. As we know, there's a cost. There's a cost that comes with playground equipment, so we're going to have to wait and see what happens with that. Next was the RES and Jordan Small Middle School water. There is still some work to be done. And let me tell you, this doesn't kill anybody more than it kills Bill to be able to say this. But there is work to be done. They're presently filling in the old well, and testing is still going on with good results. The results are good, but Bill is all about safety, and until Bill is until it passes enough tests that Bill is really secure in the feeling that there is good water there. RES will remain on bottled water a little longer. And then it was just other. And so just a reminder that with any facilities plan, there will continually be times when plans will change due to extenuating circumstances that affect safety of students and staff and functionality of our buildings. It's a balancing act, and we have the best facilities director and his staff to ensure education never takes a back seat. I wrote that down because I didn't want to forget to say it. Bill and his crew are spectacular, to put it. That's about the best I can say of it. Whatever the issue is, they're right there, Johnny on the spot, and it's corrected. That is probably more than can be said for a lot of districts and a lot of schools. So we are very, very grateful to have them working in RSU 14. That's it.
Thank you. Policy?
Marge, you were on a phone, but your minutes note that the gym is completed at the Wyndham Primary School as well. And the roof and the new flooring is done. I didn't want you to miss that. That's good news.
I know. I don't know how I missed over that.
Great news.
Because it's done.
It's your tiny little phone.
That's right. I know, tiny phone. But
All right.
it's complete, finally. It is finally complete. They're very happy. Anybody gets a chance and you're in the building, take a look at the floor. Of course, you can't notice no leaks, thank God, but the floor looks great. And everybody's very happy, I'm sure, because it's cold out to be back in there. Thank you, Jody.
All right, so for policy, not nearly as fun as the new floor in the gym. We met on the 17th, and we continue our work in a few policies that are not required but have been identified as needing review. We continued our work. You might remember we started on an extra and co-curricular eligibility policy. This one's going to have a nomenclature change. We'll bring it to you in future, so I won't get into that. But we did review insurance, some discipline aspects, and qualifying activities. This is part of a larger project with the athletic director. He'll incorporate this policy into an updated athletic handbook. We also reviewed co-curricular contracts for other activities such as chamber singers. Still to be completed on this one is aligning transportation language across all the policies as it relates to transportation from events. So once that one's done, we'll bring it to you. We still have a little bit of work to do on that one. We finalized the following and we'll bring to a future agenda: BF, policy development, BF's regulation, so BFR, FF, naming and renaming of school buildings and facilities, and we also completed a review of BEDB agenda format and the regulation BEDB-R. We also reviewed updated consultation from Drummond Woodsum regarding this board's request for the policy committee to review any new advice on the foundation's policies. These include AC, ACAA, and ACAB. So I just wanted to report out the follow-up to that request. The policy committee acknowledges that the U.S. Supreme Court is scheduled to hear oral arguments in the January 26th session from two cases that address the complex intersection of state law and the interpretation of Title IX's protections against sex-based discrimination. RSU 14 policies currently are in alignment with the 2020 federal regulations that went into effect following a court order suspending the Biden Title IX regulations and reinstituting the 2020 Trump Title IX regulations. No changes are needed to our existing Title IX related policies at this time as they align with this 2020 court order. Our work will continue Monday, December 3rd at 9:30 a.m. at the Superintendent's Conference Room. Agenda will include BEA, which is Board of Directors email, BEAA, standard operating procedures to guide communication with the public, and then finalizing that extracurricular policy as I noted above. We'll then continue through our required policies outlined in our online agenda.
Thank you. Curriculum?
We haven't met and we won't meet until the new year.
Thank you. Next item, report of the secretary. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the minutes of the November 5th, 2025 meeting.
Second.
For discussion? Ginny? I think your mic is off.
How's that? Better?
Better.
Amend one sentence. It's on page 6. It is on that page, the second bullet point down. It's the sentence that says, she acknowledges that legal action could be taken should the board vote to remove the suggested language from existing policy, but gives other examples of possible litigation. And I just would like to add to that sentence, if it does not. Just those 4 words, just to clarify.
Okay. Do you have consensus that we can just change that tomorrow morning? Okay. Any further discussion on this? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next item, Raymond Elementary School State of the School. Welcome, Mrs. Peavy.
Well, good evening. I just want to first say thank you to the school board members. You often come and visit the schools, and we've had a slew of you come to the school and visit, so do appreciate that. Or you've come to our assemblies or to some of our student activities, so we do appreciate that. I'm going to first start out with our program highlights, which I will focus on the goals. And last year, our goals are also transitioning into this year. We kept pretty much the same goals because a lot of the work we did was at the beginning stages, and some of those goals really need multiple years to be worked on. So goal 1 is really looking around our core instruction. And last year I talked a lot about our early literacy skills, phonemic awareness, segmenting, and blending, which is critical in reading development as well as writing skills. Our kindergarten class last year was very successful. Kirsten Chansky was my standard-based teacher, but now is our math coach, has done a lot of work with our kindergarten students. And this year, our kindergarten students entering first grade had a pre-assessment on the UFly, our phonics program, and they were ahead of where they normally start in the year. So the teachers had to already adjust at where that starting point was going to be. So that was impressive. And we also noticed that their skills did not, they didn't lose a lot of skills over the summer. And that is critical to have. Often we look at data, and we look at data dipping down in third grade, and we ask why. Sometimes students will look like they are proficient readers and then all of a sudden start dipping down in third grade because you're going into more complex words. And if they don't have those foundational decoding skills, then it becomes more problematic for them, and it may not show up until around third grade. And then we get into more complex comprehension skills. I have a chart you can't see because I didn't realize how small our screen is going to be, but this PowerPoint will be on the RES website. But Kirsten Chansky just gave me some information the other day that our kindergarten growth, because we're doing the same interventions with our students. Last year we started the blending and segmenting with our students at the halfway mark, starting in the middle of the year. This year we're started with our students right at the beginning of the year. So they're learning those skills as well as letter sounds. And our kindergarten growth surpassed the winter benchmarks already. And that's also impressive in the work that she's doing with our teachers. And she's also working with Wyndham primary teachers as well. We also, in the math area, we were looking at continuing our number sense. That's also another foundational skill that's important that builds into the other concepts in mathematics across all grade levels. And I talked about universal number sense screeners. Last year, we just started with that process. Some classes did the screeners. We did it mostly with some of our students that were most at risk. But this year, all the grade levels did the screeners with their students. And just to give you a little, I know when we look at data, we often look at iReady and NWA, which gives you a snapshot, but really a lot of the work we do with data is drilling down with students to see what they need. And one of those is our universal number sense screener. And for the little chart on the left, on the bottom, third grade did a pre and post test, so in September, and now their overall scores, they jumped up proficiency of 20%. So that's because they've been focused on work around building number sense with students. Kirsten Chansky, our math coach, does professional development with the teachers, does rounds with the teachers, supports the teachers in the classroom, and has been building that understanding of number sense and how to get there with students. That is not typically what we think number sense would be. So she's taken some coursework, and there's a lot of learning going on, and we're seeing that transfer in with our students. And then for attendance was another one of our goals, and so this year we're doing things a little bit differently. Used to give certificates to students for 100%, actually doing 100% certificates for the day. So if students show up and they're at school, I go around, I put a little certificate up there, and it's actually gaining more excitement from students than individual students getting certificates. They get really excited as a class, and so each month we're going to recognize the classes that have the most certificates. And one of the other things I've been doing is in my newsletter each month, and I've started with attendance percentages for parents. And so looking at September and October, our lowest was really 96.3% in pre-K in September. Our highest was 98% in first grade in September. And in October, similar numbers depending on the grade level. So we're going to kind of keep track each month to see what the trends are. And also just communicating with families. And I think numbers for some families, having a visual and another form of how to communicate keeping those numbers up and having kids at school. Also, we have restructured our PBIS, and I will be talking about that later, but that also encompasses our attendance, engagement, activities we do at school to get students to come to school. We also, with attendance, we have, for some students that struggle, we've talked about this in the past, but it's kind of shifted a little, is mentorship in our building. I do have a leadership team for third and fourth graders that my counselor runs, but we also have older students being paired up with younger students, and that really, this summer when we were talking about our PBIS assembly, we switched up how we do our assemblies. We used to have them sitting by grade level. Now we have an older grade level class paired up with a younger, and they sit next to each other. And they're also paired up for other activities during the year. And so that they're role models for the younger students. So we also have students that help get the lunch cart for the pre-K students as an incentive. And so we use pre-K for rewards. A lot of older students like to support the younger students. Engagement. Christine, the other Christine, the early childhood coordinator, myself, my first grade team and second grade team went to the MDOE mainly play lab. So last summer, when we had to develop our goals, I threw out there the word play. Chris kind of laughed at me, wondering what I was thinking. I look at school engagement where students interact with other students. They are experiencing more hands-on, and it's not all the time because we do have programs. When looking at students who are sitting at a desk and doing workbook pages, that is not as engaging as how can we do the same lesson but use materials that would support that lesson. That doesn't always have to be the math manipulatives in the kit, but outdoor materials can come in or go outside and do the same math word problems and teach those skills and have kids integrate. So when looking at play, we went to the conference. I didn't want to necessarily use play, but it gave perspective. We did a lot of activities, and it really is about purposeful learning. When students are engaging with others, they're teaching each other and they're learning from each other. They're developing problem-solving skills, creativity, and that's because they're integrating and interacting with each other versus always being led by a teacher. They need to have that discourse. They need to work things out in social skills. When we have programs, it's easy to open the book or the nowadays laptop and project what we're doing, but it's important to find where in those units or activities we can throw in play or use of hands-on materials to still get to the same target that is expected of the lesson. So I've brought that to my team, and it's not like we're jumping right in because it has to be purposeful. We want to make sure our students are still learning what they're supposed to be learning. But we have a first grade team and a second grade team that went to the training, and they had to put in an action step that they're going to do. And during the training, they had different types of ways to do play, such as skits or storytelling or these bins where you can make things. Sometimes it's culmination of projects at the end. So they had to pick one area and look at what they're already doing in their programs and embed it. So the format of the play that they described was really follows the For Me program. And I know we've tried integrating the For Me program. We have pre-K for me in first grade and pre-K. We tried integrating it in kindergarten and first grade. The For Me program is complex. It has a lot. And when we have programs, it's really challenging to do that program fully. So this conference really taught us that concepts of that program we can do with what we already have. It's like, what is the premise of, storytelling and acting? What is the importance of that, and how can you embed it in your work? Like vocabulary, students can act out words, and it's more engaging than trying to memorize words. So I challenge my staff to dabble with play, and so they've embraced some of that, and we're on our journey, and hopefully it will increase engagement. The other area that we've looked at this year is a community service, increasing those activities and school-wide involvement. Yesterday at JSMS, the Gather and Give Thanksgiving baskets, boxes fundraiser through Raymond Rec, JSMS and RES supported that as well. Students at RES decorated all the boxes. Parents and families attended last night and prepared all the boxes. So those will go to community members in need. And that's in addition to RES does the Thanksgiving and holiday helpers, and we have community sponsors. We have between the two schools over 30 kids that will be sponsoring for the holidays, and they're all accounted for. We have over 23 Thanksgiving bags that will be going home. So some of the work we're doing for our community. Also, this would probably fall under more the PBIS, but still engagement is through Lisa Garneau. We have Becca Bickford, who's a well-known psychologist, who's also coming in and doing PD with our staff on adversity and trauma-based practices, trauma-informed practices. She worked with our Rise and Bridges program last year, our special ed programs, and this year she has been coming in. She's come in twice to RES and in the other schools to do PD with all our staff. Really founded under, research-based, new research, just looking at how we work with students that have trauma. It's shifting. Things are shifting for students. We see it more in our schools. And what are the best practices? Things that we thought were best practices a long time ago actually are, it shifts, and you see that it may not be as beneficial for students as we thought. So we're shifting in those practices as well. Challenges, attendance. Elementary level, it's a little more challenging because it's influenced by vacations, because it's cheaper to go when it's not our school vacation week. Medical needs, we've had students that have had to be out for long periods of time for medical needs, and the regular seasonal illnesses. So that can impact students, and then on top of if they sometimes just take a mental health day. Also, which is a challenge for us, is increasing social emotional needs, affecting readiness and engagement in classroom dynamics. I have to say RES is a wonderful school community because it's small, but sometimes when there's a lot of dynamics and you've been with your classmates for 5 years or 3 years, it can be a little challenging. When you only have 2 to 3 classes, also hard to spread out students. So we're always navigating those pieces because we are a close community, which is also very positive. Time and consistency needed to implement new practices, including PBIS and attendance. Small school, it's all of us that are the same ones on each of the committees. So just trying to find time to be really effective and mindful in what we're doing. Action plan. So instruction, we're going to continue with our PLC cycles. The other focus this year is data, and it's one of my personal goals to look at data in different ways with my staff than just the broad scope, but diving deeper into data in different ways. And so that's also providing more time for PLC, the groups of grade level teachers, to work together so they can develop their goals. Last year, at the end of the year, all the work we did at the school, they had to come up with, their grade level had to come up with next steps for this year. So when we started school in the in-service days, we already started with how did we end last year, where are we going this year, and looking at the data with our fall iReady, and does it align, and do we continue with those goals? Expand use of numbers and screeners. So right now at the whole school, we also are using the Advantage Math Recovery for progress monitoring for students that teachers are finding that the students are still not making gains in math, and we just need a more comprehensive outlook. You assess them one-on-one, and you break down what their mathematical thinking is, and it'll tell you what your next steps are in working with the students. And so those are with Kristen Chansky's support. She also will do the testing if needed, the screener, and then work with the teachers on how to implement what is needed. The other area of mathematics that often gets that gets missed because it's at the end of the year is geometry and measurement. So embedding that in morning activities instead of trying to, let's wait and see if we can get it at the end of the year. I mean, there's opportunities in our environment to look at geometry and measurement. It doesn't have to be a one-stop time in mathematics. Strengthen core cross-grade collaboration. It goes right back to our learning buddies, having older students working with younger students. We have what we used to call reading buddies. Now they call it fluency partners. So some teachers are pairing up with their students. The students are practicing their fluency passages, and then they get to practice with the younger students. So that's also helping with their reading. And there's a purpose, so they understand why they're doing that. Focused professional development. At the end of the school year, I sit with the coaches and team leaders, and we plan out for the year for our literacy, our math, PBIS, all those pieces. So it's outlined for the year. Intentional play-based learning. playful learning should be meaningful and powerful, empowering and joyful. So we will continue to work in do that work. First through third grade actually have implemented brain bins in the morning. So it's an independent brain bins with activities, open-ended. It requires problem solving and creativity. And the reason why they went to implementing brain bins is they read The Anxious Child, The Anxious Generation. Students, young students on technology all the time is reshaping the brain. So we know social skills, problem solving is challenging for students that tend to spend a lot of time on technology versus integrating with other peers. And so this gives them that opportunity in the morning. There's no right or wrong. It's a successful way to start the day and engaging. K and through second grade are also working on purposeful play in their academics. We are continuing to redefine expectations and routines for our play, especially for our upper level students. Fourth grade has started 2 to 3 days a week trying to do an activity or project that carries over for more than one day that ties into their units. So it's a little bit more in depth. And then we have some pictures. So we have outdoor learning. We have our group that went to Mainly Play Lab Conference. Fourth grade is working on making slime with ratios, and they had a little science project. Down on the bottom are the learning buddies. Pre-K student outside examining a rock. And then the little girl on the bottom has a brain bin. One of the article on the side there, fourth grade class has the Goddard Gazette monthly. It's a newspaper. Every student has an article. First one in September, they interviewed people in the building and had pictures. And this month was more of their favorite things that we should know. And so every month there'll be a new newspaper. PBIS. So last year we decided to move away, and I think I had talked about this last year, move away from the eye care rules that had been there since that school has started, maybe when it was here first. It was language heavy, had a lot of words. Kids were not necessarily engaging with it as they had in the past. My kids went to school through here, through RES and JSMS, and they could tell me all the rules. We found that kids were not remembering the rules, and there was just a lot of words. We also wanted to align with the district with a little twist. We did be safe, be responsible, be respectful, but we did add the be kind. We also felt like it was time, because in a year JSMS will be leaving Raymond and the middle school will be in Wyndham, that if we were going to change everything in our PBIS, then we would change our mascot. So we went to the Eagles, so we're the Raymond Eagles as well, to be part of the district and consistent. It's also for our young students who are in pre-K. When they leave us and go to Wyndham for kindergarten, the expectations are the same. The language is the same, and it's easier to speak to them about what is expected. Remember, walking feet so you can be safe. It's a lot easier than hands are for helping, not hurting, those pieces. We also worked on our school-wide expectations based under each of those categories. Our positive plans for students that need them all align with our rules, our be safe, be responsible. Our positive plans have also shifted with the support of and the training from Becca Bickford, where students start at a 0, they earn up. We're not taking away. Anything written on the plan is positive. It's all about giving feedback, positive feedback, helping students to learn how to regulate themselves and know what they need to work towards without shame, really. Students, we have the cash-in tickets on the end. So I'll talk a little bit more on the next screen, but students earn tickets. It's all new for us. We did tokens and then would do a big celebration when we filled a jar. This takes a little bit more work. Jessica, do you want to work at our school store? I heard you're wonderful at that. We also have Cooper, who is our once or twice a month comes to RES, a therapy dog, a social worker that works in Raymond, who I actually used to work with a long time ago. She brings Cooper and sometimes just helps some kids to regulate in the morning. Community and culture, we have our, like I spoke before, our mentorship programs, our reading buddies, learning buddies, and integrated service learning. And finally, a glimpse into RES. I'm really going to highlight PBIS. These are some of the activities. We have a balance of when students cash in their tickets, they can purchase, I call them tchotchkes, toys, things, or experiences. So we have experiences like get the principal's chair for a day, wear Eagle medal for a day, Eagle Pal for a day, phone call home. We tried calling you the other day. Come on, stop working. I have to say it's a highlight because my calls are not always the most positive calls, but it is so nice to hear the student explain why they're doing the call and how they earned the tickets. And every parent has said, "You have made my day," to their child. I think that's probably the thing that sorry, that, keeps me going. Those like positive moments, like, hey, and they don't let me forget. We have our list of kids that need to do things and they don't let me forget that we need to do that positive phone call. Are you home tomorrow? Because he's on my list. They can cash in their ticket for lunch with a friend. So we have a table that gets all decorated. It's there. They bring their friends. They can get a picture with the mascot. We have an eagle costume. We have a wall that's called the PBIS wall. Kids will cash in for just signing their name on the wall. As simple as that. Here, go sign your name. Or take a picture and have your picture on the wall. So those are I think that's an important part of RES that's building more community in our school, besides the academics. It's a lot of fun to see kids wanting to earn and do things that are just not always about toys and games, but experiences, and see their personalities. And that's a wrap. Questions? Joe?
Thanks. That's great. Great stuff. A couple of comments and 2 questions. I said the same thing to Dr. Rhodes when he presented, but the implementation of trauma-informed practices, I just applaud that so much. It's well evidence-based and has got to be a great support for our students. So wonderful stuff. I really enjoyed hearing about the implementation of play-based learning. Certainly one of the things that has given me, some pause, and this isn't our district, it's all districts, the heavy reliance on technology for teaching and assessment, and seeing push the other direction is really, really nice to see.
If they want to pilot a school without technology, I'm in. We're going to bring it right back. No.
Support.
I mean, there needs to be a balance, and we need just to make sure kids have opportunities to engage with students and learn from them.
That's great. My 2 questions. First off, the core instruction numbers you shared, we had the charts up here as well. Really, really impressive results on both the reading comprehension, phonemic awareness, and the number sense. Is there any sharing that goes on between the primary school and Raymond Elementary in both directions about successes and things that are going well?
Well, Ms. Chansky is working with the primary school, and we've done some training and meeting, as admin as well, and his standard-based teacher, as far as the implementation for that. So she's working, because they're starting this year, so she's been working with them, and Jess Melcher, the literacy coach, with that implementation for the phonics, phonemic awareness, blending and segmenting.
Awesome. That's really good stuff. Finally, on attendance, I'm just curious how this year compares with last year, if you happen to know off the top of your head.
Usually we start strong, and it really does vary too, depending on classes. Sometimes you can have a group that moves out that might have had a lot of attendance issues. I'm hoping, I think last year we were under 95%, so our goal is to be above 95%. What we don't have a lot of at our school is truancy, so that's a good thing. Chronic absenteeism, we look at the percentages now. So we're starting, teachers communicate, and then we're now starting to communicate where it's looking like if you continue in this pattern, by the end of the year, they will end the year with truancy. There are some families that it's an ongoing process, but it's really critical to kind of touch base with the families that it wasn't a pattern before and see if they don't always realize how many days students are out, and you give them the numbers and just check in, and then they shift for the rest of the year. It also depends on if it's a flu season that hits the whole school, it depends on a lot of things.
Great. Thanks. Cool stuff going on. Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of fun. You're welcome.
Further questions for Mrs. Peavy? Ginny?
So this goes back to basics, but I'm thinking if anyone is in the audience listening, what does PBIS stand for?
Oh, sorry.
No, that's all right.
Positive behavior intervention and supports.
Perfect. And then PLC?
That's sometimes they call it PLT. It's just really your team together that you're going to work together.
Great.
And so for my school, it's by grade level because I have 2 to 3 teachers by grade level. Wyndham Primary has PLC teams by grade level in each house.
Oh.
And then they have an overall grade level team. So they might have multiple second grade PLCs or groups together. Mine are just one group for second grade, one group for third grade,
Perfect.
and so on.
And then I was wondering, and other people my age are probably wondering, when does laptop use start? Right, kindergarten, pre-K?
Pre-K, we have iPads in the classroom, but really pre-K, I want them to continue playing, enjoying, and going outside to the outdoor classroom. They have an outdoor classroom that they've built up. You should visit that as well. They go every Friday for about an hour and a half outside. But laptops start in second grade. iPads are in first grade for iReady, as well as for kindergarten. They do iReady Pathways that aligns with our Ready Math. They also use Lexia. That's also a phonics-based online program for students as well. So they use the iPad. Second grade and up is laptops. And then second grade, we start working on typing. So keyboarding, not typing. Keyboarding.
Great. It sounds great. Everything is very interesting. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further questions for Mrs. Peavy Grace?
Not a question, just a huge thank you for all of this information, for one thing, but all that you're doing as well as all that your staff is doing. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
I think we're set. Thank you.
All right.
All right, our next presentation will be CDS Transition Planning with Mr. Howell and Mrs. Frostburton.
Well, Christine is going ahead and putting up the slides. So I also just want to thank Mrs. Peavy as well, because one of the things I think people forget is that all of our schools have school improvement plans, things that they're working on. That's all in addition to just running a school and all the different things that happen day in, day out for staff, with making sure that lunches run on time, schedules run, that there's any changes, that there's a fire drill, there's an alarm that goes off, just running a school and all the components that are along with that. So again, just want to thank Mrs. Peavy and all of our principals for the tremendous work that they do day in, day out, but then also throughout all of that is making sure that some of this more important work is continuing to move forward. Board members, you have a copy of the presentation that Christine and Lisa are going to be sharing here tonight. In addition, in your board packets, this is the Reader Digest version, and in your board packets, your electronic packets, you actually have a more involved, which has a little bit more of the law and the policy related to what we're going to talk about tonight. But first of all, just want to introduce Christine Frostburton, who's our Assistant Superintendent, and Lisa Garno, who is our Director of Student Services, and just an outstanding team in the district that is working on a transition to the transition of special education services for students who are ages 3 and 4, which is really 2.5 to age 5 for the district taking on special education services for those students. And all of this is surrounding changes that were made in Augusta at the legislative level for transitioning Child Developmental Services, CDS, the services that they provide for 3 to 5-year-olds to local school districts. And Maine is one of maybe 2 or 3 states where CDS services are not taken on by public schools, and so the decision was made to do this transition so that schools would be doing that. So by July of 2028, July 1, that we are up and running and we are providing special education services again for students 2.5 to age 5 as we work through that process and that transition. One thing that we are fortunate with as a district, because we've meet regionally, we've had plenty of discussions about as we look to make this transition, one of the things that we have been set up well as a district is that with the opening of the new middle school, which the state of Maine agreed to add an additional grade level by doing some grade transitions, we actually pick up a whole grade level worth of classrooms and space to allow us to meet the needs of the services that we'll be providing. In other districts and other places right now that are struggling with space, they will not have that option of additional space coming available for them. So it's one piece as we've been able to look down the road as far as transitions thing to be taking place, to be able to ask for that additional grade level provides some space. The other thing that I want to point out is that we have experts here in the room. Christine and Lisa have been working on this with their peers across the state. And Christine, in the work that she's done for transitioning, first of all, pre-K in, but then also the work that she's done back in Waterboro and with statewide cohorts, is now becoming a regional leader where other districts are looking to her for her advice on helping to make this transition. Just absolutely a tremendous asset to RSU 14 and the work that she's done in helping with this transition. So I'm going to turn this next piece over to her without having her trip on this cord.
So kind. Thank you, Chris. And it really is a team. I mean, Lisa Garno is the best of the best. And so we have been talking a lot, meeting with a lot of folks, and I've been on the pre-K advisory board for the state for the last couple of years, so that's given us sort of that right at the edge of this work, a perspective with all sorts of input from stakeholders around the state, which has been exciting. This tonight we've talked about this before. You may have heard us talk about in different pre-K updates about this FAPE transition, another acronym. We'll unpack that one. We've talked about cohorts and what's happening, but we're ready to take the leap into cohort 3. That's exciting because we get the opportunity in cohort 3 to say, we're going to leap, but we're just going to put one foot in with 4-year-olds. Because as Chris said, by July 1 of 2028, the responsibility will fall on us to be delivering that responsibility of special education services to 3 and 4-year-olds. But next year, we have the final opportunity to just take on 4-year-olds. So get a sense of the processes and the systems and structures we need to feel really well poised and ready for the full responsibility. Lisa is here, so if we get deep into questions later, I may pass the mic over, and we are thankful for her. But what does this legislative change mean? So if you want the law, we're talking about Public Law 2023 C643 Part W. And what does that mean for us? The law changes which agency is responsible for providing and funding special education services for young children. So that's what this law is doing. It's saying that, what is the change? Previously, Child Development Services, or CDS, another acronym, we love those, CDS was responsible for the delivery of these services. But under this new law, that will fall on local units. And we know that shift happens for us in the 27-28 school year, 28-29 school year. July 1 of 28, sorry. Okay, so what does this mean? As Chris spoke about earlier, we have been doing a lot of work, not necessarily tied to this transition, but work to build a robust mixed delivery pre-K model. We've talked about mixed delivery before, but our approach has really been to embrace that model, the model that the state and many other states really recognize as a wonderful way to approach early childhood education in partnership with your local businesses, and giving families, as we've talked about, a lot of diversity in what program they think will best meet their youngest learners' needs. And so whether that is right here at Raymond Elementary School and Best School, right out of the gate, first school to take it on in RSU 14, and they've done it beautifully, or up the hill here in Raymond to CASA, a wonderful family child care center, still the first and only in Maine, partnering with a local public school, other child care centers like a Child's World in Wyndham, like Space to Thrive, very exciting. That was a grand opening with our governor and many others there, celebrating that great Birth to 5 center here in Wyndham. Very exciting partner for us this year. And next year we're exploring additional partners to really think about the variety of what we're offering. And why partner? We've talked about this before, but again, that community-centered focus, that we're all coming together and really leaning on the expertise of local providers and local businesses. There's a place for them to engage in this conversation with us and to partner or to participate in meetings and give input into their experience if they're not in a place yet ready to partner. So that will, all the work that's been done in that mixed delivery arena here in RSU 14 will really lend itself for us as next year we head into taking on the full special education responsibility for 4-year-olds. So let's talk about what that means and some of the work we're doing to prepare. We're going to talk a little about our needs and funding. What are our existing numbers? So as of July 30th, 2025, and again today verified by Lisa, we have 125 3- and 4-year-olds that would need our attention and planning to deliver special education services to. So as we look at numbers, we take that number of 125 3- and 4-year-olds and we talk to the state, as we have done, and we look at what would that mean in terms of the revenue, the money that we would get to support the students who need the service delivery. CDS has struggled, we know that across the state and in our area here, they have struggled to provide those services due to a variety of factors, limited space, limited staffing. The capacity has just not been there to meet the growing need, in particular in Cumberland County and certainly other areas around the state. So it's because of that that we will be looking to shift that responsibility to fall on local districts across the state. And to Chris's point earlier, we are late to that game. Maine is very late to that game. So we are just now getting in to a model that we have many exemplars around the nation, how this can work best, and we can pick and choose what we like in terms of other models. The project, for you all to understand, and certainly for the Finance Committee in particular, it's fully funded by the state. That was outlined in statute. That means 100% financial, technical assistance. The work that we will do to program for these students is fully funded. We will receive quarterly payments from the state for the students that are enrolled, that we identify through our outreach and looking at the data that CDS has. We will receive quarterly payments. There will be quarterly conversations that we're having with the state. Do we not have enough funds to meet the needs? Did we sort of underestimate? Did we overestimate? We'll be in conversation with the Department of Education to make sure that those students and their special education needs are being met and fully funded. When we look at the districts that have been in cohorts 1 and 2, there has been very positive feedback about that relationship and conversation with the Department of Education, and that the funding has been meeting their needs. So we have other districts for the last 2 years that have been out doing this work, and we have, again, great friends we can lean on as we look at what this will mean for us. And the FAPE transition is funded and expended outside of our regular budget through a separate funding code. So that might be a question, and I see some folks writing that down, but that is going to fall outside of our regular budget. So that will be a conversation I'm sure we'll have as we get into budget season. So what are the implications of joining cohort 3? Tried to condense this down. The first one I want to speak to is the responsibility to provide or contract. Just so it's clear, that responsibility, as we take this on next year, will just be for 4-year-olds, and that will mean it's no longer the responsibility of CDS starting next school year. We will be taking on all of those responsibilities: the outreach, the identification, what are the service needs, all of the meetings, the preparatory work, the staffing that we need, occupational therapy, physical therapy, speech and language, assessments, school psychologists. This has an impact on a team of educators, and we'll have to properly staff to make sure we can meet that need. A second bullet, the legal responsibility if any complaints come forward that they did not have the services needed for their child. We will have to be making sure that we're meeting all the needs, and if a complaint comes forward, that's something that we'll have to be ready to respond to. We also have the freedom to design, implement, and maintain a plan that meets the mandate, so we can really customize as long as we're in alignment with Chapter 124 and IDEA and special education requirements. We can make this our own. We can sort of have our own spin on it as long as we're in alignment with laws, of course. But that's an exciting piece that I think, certainly with Lisa's insights and Beth and others who have been doing early childhood work, that team is going to be a critical part of this design. And the hiring. So hiring will be an important step to make sure we have enough special education resource room teachers and the related service providers, like I mentioned. So that's an overview, and I'm sure we'll talk more about this, and then we'll open it up to questions. Jess?
Are we worried about the hiring process of this? Because I know, good question. We've had that issue with just our regular school system, let alone now this added responsibility.
So my hope is that the legislature will approve the changes to Chapter 115, which will change special ed from a 282B, which is what you currently need to work with pre-K. And then in school, we have a K-8 282B, and we have a 712 282B. So directors and superintendents and people across the state have been advocating that we will have a pre-K 12 282. So what that means is if I have a resource room teacher at, RES, for example, and they only have 15 students on their caseload, K4, they could now also access and work with students who are 4 in the pre-K. So I was talking to somebody today, actually, and I don't know if you guys do football or not, but I'm a Kansas City Chiefs fan. But I'll use Tom Brady for today. And his thing is, let's go, right? So that's what I said to Chris and Christine. I feel completely comfortable we can pull the 4-year-olds off. And the fact that we have that option, this is our opportunity to see what we have in place that we feel confident with in our procedures and everything that we are currently doing. We're just going to expand that out a little bit beyond our current pre-K. And I feel good about that. The 3-year-olds, I'm glad we have another year to do that.
Jess, if I can also just respond to that. Another reason, just thinking through this and going through with cohort 3 and not waiting to cohort 4 or even wait another year out, there is a limited pool out there of individuals to hire, and cohorts 1 and 2 have already hired people. And so by going with a cohort 3 it provides opportunity because we know we have individuals who currently work for CDS that will be looking to join with individual school districts. So also looking to say, how can we get out ahead a little bit and grab the limited pool that is there. The other thing that I just want to emphasize with Christine, because one of the worries that I had, because we know it's going to be a difficult budget season, is that this transition allows us to have those expenditures outside of the regular operating budget, outside of the regular budget that goes to the public through the budget validation referendum process, and allows us to go through a reimbursement model back to the state of Maine. And it's run similar, and board members who've been around for a while, to how our food service runs, operates outside of the budget. It's an enterprise account. Money comes in, covers the individuals that are working within that program. This will follow a similar component. Be a little bit more in our office for running funding codes outside of the normal budget, and then that process of making sure that we are properly taking employees and we're charging them to the correct accounts to make sure that we are taking care of the funding and where that direction is coming from.
On that same line, is the state mandating salaries and benefits for these people? So will they basically come in similar to what we presently have? I mean, I don't want. That's why I'm wondering.
Yeah, the individuals will be hired. They'll be RSU 14 employees.
Okay.
They will run under our current contracts.
Oh, okay.
And we already have a negotiated salary rate and benefit rate for those individuals.
I would just add, Marge, so for this summer, we don't have to deliver the services because CDS will continue. Summer of 27, we will have to deliver services because CDS, I won't get in the weeds, but the timelines are different. Instead of 45 days, it's 60 calendar days for evaluation and identification. We will have to work over the summer, so we're going to have conversations about what that looks like. So that could, but that, again, those people will be funded outside of the local budget for that part.
Okay, just one more question on that. So is there a possibility that the people who are working through the school year might be available, or would it be possible for them to also pick up
I'm
some of that?
super hoping that they will be.
Yeah, I know. Okay, thank you. Joe?
Yeah, I've got a series of notes I've written down, and if we need to take some of it offline, that's of course fine. First and foremost, though, I mean, I understand there's not a choice here, but the apparent willingness and eagerness to take this on is really impressive because this is not insignificant. This is a really big deal. Mm-hmm. And I think it's important to call out here, the way I understand it is it's a, fixed reimbursement per enrolled student. But my guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, is that this is more work for everybody I'm looking at, and that's probably not recognized in that reimbursement structure. I assume we're covering direct costs, but not indirect costs. So I think that's just important to note.
Thank you.
And it's one of those pieces, right? If not us, then who? So once again, the public schools are taking on a really big task here. So I guess that's not a question yet. I'll get to a question. Can you just, because I'm not terribly familiar with how these services get delivered, how will we provide the services and oversight in one of these third-party centers that aren't on our school campuses?
So currently, we are partnering with like a Child's World or Tucasa, and as our current service providers are available, we're actually providing those services. We're currently sending staff there. The way it works now is we have a fee-for-service with CDS, so we bill through Sync for our teachers and ed techs and speech therapists that are going out into the community. We won't have Sync anymore. We will incorporate those 4-year-olds into the Acuity system, which we have for paperwork, but we also bill through Acuity for Lumia and Main Care. And my understanding, working with Jason Black, who is our rep with Acuity, cohort 1 and 2 build Main Care through that same platform. So our anticipation is we will bill for through that as much as we can as well. It doesn't come back to me; that comes back to you all as revenue. So that's our plan too, to try to offset some of the costs.
Okay, that makes good sense. As far as the budget goes, Chris, this is probably you question, but where, even though it's not part of the public budget, does it show up as a warrant item still, or is it completely off that?
It won't show up as a warrant article. It will actually just going to show up as a separate. The board will be aware because you'll have the opportunity to look at the budget through much like you look at for food service. One of the pieces that I'm still working through is that how fluid will our numbers be? So quarter one, do we have 60 students? Quarter two, do we have 70? Does it then contract to 43? For me, and just my new learning for other districts is that how stable does that number remain? Because stable numbers mean stable budgeting, and we're able to work through that process. One thing that is encouraging through this is through quarterly payments, so that if we do have an influx of kids who move in and we're looking to provide services, we have the ability to bill right off instead of waiting till the following year when those numbers then catch. So we're evaluating within the office and the business office on making sure that we're doing timely billing, timely payments, how that might possibly work, just to make sure that as an enterprise account, it's operating and we're continuing to not put burden on the regular operating, because there may be times where we have to front a little bit of money and then we're paying ourselves back, but making sure that those accounts are staying away from each other and not commingling.
And I didn't call out Stacy when I was sharing appreciation, but of course this is going to impact her office quite a lot as well. My last question is also technical in nature. So for the child fine requirement, how does that get executed in some of these third-party centers?
So it's actually, we're just going to extend our current child fine. So instead of starting with the 5-year-olds, really our child fine process starts when we do kindergarten screening and our incoming CDS meetings. So just for the record, we had 82 incoming kindergartners with IEPs this year that we took in through CDS. We are actually doing our first RTI with pre-K next week. And so we're hopeful that maybe we won't identify as many students, but to your point, we will have to advertise like we normally do. We'll post it on our website. And so families can do outreach to, like, again, that'll be part of this year's work before the end of the summer to set up those procedures and practices. So we'll have to have all that posted publicly so people know what to do. But essentially, you would reach out to our office, and, if you're a family, if you're a doctor's office, if you're, just a normal concern, then we would have to hold an IEP meeting and hear the concerns and then make the conversation. And we are responsible for 4-year-olds, not just the 4-year-olds that are attending our pre-K program. So if there's a family that's in a private daycare, let's say Marge had a daycare and she had a 4-year-old that was in her program, if that mom was concerned, they would have to call us and we would have to do the evaluation and the identification, and they may or may not qualify, but gives us control.
Just to make sure I understand, the pre-K students that are enrolled with our program, they'll go through a kindergarten type screening, obviously not kindergarten, but for pre-K.
So we screened all the pre-Ks as well, so that works. The nice thing about taking on the 4-year-olds is, so last year, my team, Karen McMullen and Melissa Bois, and then the regular ed teacher that we wrangled, who was retired, came in and did those 80-plus, and Beth did a lot of them, CDS meetings. We won't have to do those anymore. So once the 4-year-olds are ours, their IEPs will be ours, so that eliminates literally weeks of meetings and paperwork that follows, so there will be some savings, on that side as well.
Great. That's all I have. Thank you so much.
Sue? How does the immunization process work for the 4-year-olds? Is it the school nurses that are documenting them for outside programs as well?
Right. So all of our partner sites, all students register through RSU 14. So if you're a Wyndham resident, you register through Wyndham Primary School, and a Raymond through Beth's school. And then the nurses have to verify that we're in compliance. So same process for kindergarten, bump it down to 4-year-olds, and eventually to 3-year-olds.
Marge. Just a thought. You stated that it'll probably continue through the summer. Does the state also reimburse us for any additional cost the district picks up because of buildings being functioning during the summer where we normally don't have that going on?
Well, the original cohorts had some facilities funds. We don't have the same facilities use funds, but you're talking energy costs?
Similar to that, if we have to bring, if we have extra custodians, any extra costs that might arise due to the fact that the one or two of the schools
Yeah.
are functioning during the summer where they normally don't.
Given the breadth of programming now that we're offering in the summer, a lot of our buildings do have
Okay.
operational spaces that are already happening. So
Okay.
I anticipate costs will be minimal. The other piece that I just want to add to this is that the 4-year-olds don't make me as nervous as the 3-year-olds the following year.
Yeah, I know.
And what does programming look like for 3-year-olds? And then what is our obligation? Because what we're learning through this process is that it's not just the 3-year-old and their parent, that the obligation for the district is that we provide an hour here, hour there of services that they were previously receiving by CDS. We also have the requirement, if families are interested, in providing some programming with peers, and while they're also receiving their special education services. So again, as Christine mentioned, with 4-year-olds, it's something that as we have built as a district with 129 students this year that are currently 4-year-olds that are currently experiencing programming, Best School and in our partners and in Kyle's school, when the 3-year-olds come on, that will be a different piece, and I think it gives us a chance to learn with the 4-year-olds with those kids that we're already used to.
But just, Marge, also, if you think school buses, Aaron and Sharon have been looking ahead to this transition of FAPE responsibility. So they've been purchasing those fold-down 5-point harness
Steeple.
seats. So we're queuing up that eventually, when we're there, universal, for 4-year-olds, we'll have seats in the front of every school bus. But already we've been thinking ahead to some of those details and associated costs.
Janie?
So, for some reason, I'm thinking that CDS will be dissolved. That's right? So what happens, this is not your problem, but 0 to 3, where do they go?
Their CDS will be rebranded. I think I can't remember off the top of my head, I apologize, but they're like early childhood coordinators or something like that.
Okay.
Early childhood intervention, maybe.
Right.
So birth to like 2 years, 6 months, that'll be them. And then at 2 years, 6 months in your detailed packet, you have links that outlines every 2 years, 6 months, 2 years, 7 months, 2 years, 9 months, what the school has to be doing with that organization through the state to make sure that by the time the child's 3, we've finished the referral process and identified them.
So just a personal note, we've worked closely with a family member with speech therapy that started around 16 months,
Yep.
18 months, up to 3 years old, and that child had every week a speech therapist come. And then at 3, it dropped. So we had to find a speech therapist.
Right. So that will be us.
So when I read this, I just thought, oh my gosh, thank goodness, because we had we had resources, but I just thought, oh my goodness, all these people that don't have the resources. And it was so important to get it started and continue it that early. So good. I'm excited about this, really. I'll help you any way I can. I'll bring you cookies or something, but thank you for doing it. Yeah, it's great.
Grace? I'm trying to think how to say this or ask this. I'm not sure if I'm saying it or asking it. But you talked earlier, Chris, about the shift in Department of Ed and funding sources and going to different agencies, and it's not clear yet. Special ed funding coming from the federal government will for now stay with what is left of the Department of Ed, and who knows what happens tomorrow. So I'm a bit concerned about, will there be sufficient funding still coming from the federal government for special ed, because it's already very insufficient for what it should be. And will the state continue to have the funding that's going to be needed, and what will we do if those, I mean, again, there's no answer to that, I don't think, Chris. I'm not sure it was a question.
It's a concern, especially the state of Maine has put a significant investment into child developmental services, and even some of the costs per pupil are far higher than what even public schools are providing to students. And so we know that fund the legislature currently has allocated to CDS. Those funds will then be pushed over towards local school districts to meet those populations. But that is a worry in the future. And what Christine mentioned is cohorts 1 and 2. They paused revolving renovation money, and instead of having it go to school districts, they targeted that money towards pre-K transition. So those districts were able to spend a little bit of money for upgrades to buildings, to other pieces. That money no longer exists. That grant money no longer exists. Yes, there's some worry that in the future there's not sufficient funds to be able to carry that. But at this point, we need to set ourselves onto the on-ramp because we know 2028 is not that far away. But we will be having further conversations. We have further conversations with the Department of Education tomorrow afternoon on the 3-year-olds and the 3-year-old transition, on what does services look like, what is the obligation to districts as we provide that free and appropriate public education, what does programming look like. I think most districts in our area, 4-year-olds, many of us are providing pre-Ks right now, and so that transition is a little easier than now. Our age span will be age 2.5 to age 22 in the district, and that larger span of services. Go ahead, Grace.
I was not suggesting we hold off by any stretch, and I do want to just thank you all for really timing this as well as you have, with the forethought that you've had as far as having the pre-K programs that we already have in place. So thank you for all of that and all the work that's going on.
I just want to add one more thing. We're really well poised also because of the new middle school construction project. If we connect the dots there, that opens up, when that transition of grade levels happens, Wyndham Primary now has space for us to be quite, quickly at universal capacity here. And many districts around the state aren't there because of the facilities infrastructure challenge. They don't have enough room as it is right now, let alone adding for additional services in those grades.
And I think it's important for the public to hear and the board to hear, we have no desire as a district to move away from the mixed delivery model. Even with a dozen classrooms opening up at Wyndham Primary School, the programming that has been built and the choices and the opportunities that are available for the families through our wonderful pre-K partners, we will continue to strengthen those relationships and provide those opportunities for pre-K. And so by even having all those student slots and having choice for families, it does provide us some little bit of extra space, but it also provides a high-quality program for parents on how they want to choose and whether or not they want to choose to enter their children into a public pre-K program.
Jody?
So my finance committee members, the document link that Christine shared, thanks for doing that. It's around 175, that page, if you want to start looking at some of the funding. One of the things that you talked about earlier was the memorandum of understanding between the state and the district. And right around that 175 page mark, it does talk about this review. This memorandum of understanding must be reviewed and updated in response to unanticipated needs each month. And it goes on from there. Talks about the transition in year one. My question, or maybe just a comment, it talks about the regional support hubs, and this kind of ties back into the hiring piece. It talks about 9 support hubs to support the different districts, the superintendent districts, and they assist with child find activities, which Joe asked about, our child find activities. It talks about professional development and strengthening partnerships, assistance in locating transportation services. My question is specifically, my first one is on training and other professional development opportunities, technical assistance with the implementation of developmentally appropriate practices, and it goes on from there. It talks about screening, assessment. It sounds like there's going to still be sort of some of that institutional knowledge. Hopefully they would retain the most knowledgeable and seasoned staff that the district can tap into at these hubs, and they're mandated to provide a number of support services. Is that something that we would anticipate tying into? And then I have a follow-up question.
I'm hopeful, but I'm not going to count on it.
Okay.
I'm not sure what those regional hubs will be able to provide, and I'm not completely confident that they will exist to support the district. As a Greater Sebago Education Alliance, we are looking at what could we provide as a regional service center for those types of hub activities. Right now, I've not heard a lot of transition information for hubs or how those are going to be set up. And given our timeline and moving into next year, I think we're taking the stance of we're going to be looking to provide services, and honestly, the professional development that these two wonderful individuals have put together for our staff is high quality, and I think it's going to meet the needs of our staff with that.
Jody, I can just add to that. So previous to the 9 hubs, CDS had more regions. So like Tammy Barreau, who works with us through CDS Reach, she now has a superintendent's region, which means she has like 8 more communities that she has to cover. So we're already short-staffed in there, so we feel really confident that why it was so important for us in RSU 14 to get out ahead of it, because we know that, well, thank you to Chris, but we have really good processes in place, so we're just going to expand on that.
Okay. Jumping topics a little bit, the per pupil rate for children, understand the explanation. It's running outside of the regular budget, but just mentioning for the board, we'll hear about this, I'm sure, high cost placements, and talking about how that gets paid out up to 2 times or 3 times the cost of per student or per pupil for special education. So I think we need to hear more about that as we get closer, for sure. And my second question is about resources. So is it possible with the funding to place, say, I'm going to say social worker, but I'm going to also mention special education staff. Can we use those staff members within the district? If they're an FTE, do they have to be 100% allocated, or are they for us to use within the department? And can we leverage some of our shortages through this?
So we are right now I guess that's some of the things that through our trial with this, we'll get a better sense on how many staff do I need and how many can I hire. We have put in, Christine has, I think in your paperwork, a list of the proposed staff that we think we need. I think we're poised pretty well. You all have been very supportive of me in adding speech therapists and OTs. PTs is an area we probably might need to look at a little bit, but overall, I think we have some staff. I guess the question then becomes to Chris, if we're needing to hire additional staff, how does that work?
And actually, Jody, I thought your question was going in a different direction, the supplant provision, which is there opportunity that we're doing some of this now where we have positions that are meeting the needs of those students, and is there opportunity to now bill the state of Maine for those services instead of billing them now to the local budget or through other funding sources? And so is there some opportunity to really realize additional revenue to be able to meet some of the needs of current positions that are meeting those needs, in addition to ones that we know we're going to need to hire? So the supplant provision, which we run into in other places where you can't supplant dollars for different things, whether or not that's going to apply in this case, is a piece of information we need to find out.
And I didn't include this in the packet, as Lisa was mentioning, but one of the meetings that Lisa and Karen and I believe Chris and I had with the Department of Ed a while ago was, given our numbers in sync at 125, Lisa and I had brainstormed, what would this list of staff look like to the DOE? Would this look like a reasonable, with 125 students needing services, would this staff look to be correct? So that included an early childhood education coordinator, an administrative assistant, to speak to some of what Joe, I think, was mentioning, that this has some paperwork and processing components to it, 2 speech and language pathologist, 1 occupational therapist, a half-time physical therapist, school psychologist, 3 resource room teachers, and 1 to 2 educational technicians. Just to give you a general sense, we don't know. We'll have to look at the needs of the students, but we wanted to get are we in the ballpark when we look at the numbers we're seeing in sync? And so the response was yes. That seems that it would be about the team you would need to meet these special education needs based on your numbers. So again, this will keep you all updated. I don't know if that helps answer your question, Jody, but
yeah, it just made me think of something else. So if we have least restrictive environment, right? So we have multiple locations. I recognize that we have the special ed classroom at Raymond Elementary, but just thinking about having these students spread through the district today. We would love to have an interventionist at each building in future, looking at Kirsten's role and some other things that we've hopes and dreams for, with looking at cohorts for math and other things. I'm just thinking through the practicality of having one or /2 ed techs if we don't have all of these kiddos in one location because they're in classrooms in least restrictive environments with push in or pull out Title I services, that may not even be practical to be able to bring in 2 FTEs for, multiple sites. So that's definitely something to look at.
And that, Jody, is a good point. And the Greater Sebago Education Alliance early on, quite a while ago, went and visited Kittery and York. They were part of Cohort 1, and these were conversations we were having. So what were your numbers? What were your staffing needs? You tend to need more staff than you originally thought. So this is why the Department of Ed is saying, we're going to be having these quarterly conversations with you. Are your needs being met? So.
Matthew?
Just one thing really quick. I'm looking also at the number of different facilities that we have and wondering if this is going to impact the ability of parents to go through that pre-K selection process and decide which of those programs feels like a good fit. I'm just thinking we might end up with a situation where 1 or 2 of those places end up with a lot of kids that have more needs or greater intensity of needs, and how are we going to, how's the district going to cope with that?
And I'll let Lisa, if she wants to speak to that as well. But we want to maintain, as Chris said, a mixed delivery model. We want to have this lottery process. We want families to rank their first, second, third choice, and we'll do our very best to place your children in your first or second preferred location. We'll be working as a team to look at that. We want to make sure ratios are in alignment with state requirements. But we'll do everything we can. I don't know if you want to add to that.
I think to Matt, hi, I'm Lisa. I've met you through email. Currently, our process with the lottery, one of the things we do have to consider is students' IEP needs. And so for students with more significant needs, I think somebody asked about a special purpose private school potentially for pre-K. We have to look at those through the IEP team. And, I'll just use Casey at A Child's World. They do an amazing job. And she's got a couple kids that, have some behavioral needs, and we're working with her to support her. But if we needed more of a more restrictive placement, then the only option would be to either be at Raymond Elementary or Wyndham Primary School, because we have the staff already to support that.
I had a couple of questions. So looking ahead to once we have this full FAPE responsibility, I just wanted to clarify if families will still get the choice of just drop-in services, if that's all they wanted for their 2, 3, 4-year-old, versus I want to enroll in pre-K. Like, is that still a choice? Or if I have a child with disabilities that needs services, they need to be at school all day?
So we really need to, those are some of the unknowns that we're going to figure out over the next year. And so based on the information we have from DOE, we have to provide an LRE for, as Chris was kind of referencing, depending upon the I think it's 6 hours a week for 3-year-olds and like 12 hours a week for 4-year-olds. So it's selfishly, it's easier for me, they're in our pre-K program or partner, to deliver that. We have to figure out as a district, if we have a student who just needs 60 minutes a week speech, what is that going to look like? Based on all the meetings I've been in, we are not obligated to send staff into people's homes to deliver service. And so we would have to create a site where families could come, but then again, it's scheduling kind of the administrative assistant who's going to work through all that and make all that happen.
But I think, Christina, you might be saying if a family only wants to have their child come for speech and language services and not to be part of the general curriculum.
Correct, because full disclosure, I was a CDS family, and I had appointments at the CDS office. So I bring my child there to get their services, and then I ended up enrolling in a preschool that had CDS services there, and CDS paid for my child to be there. But that was my choice to do that. I didn't have to. That's what worked for my family, and this is a decision that happens outside this room, but I would hope that there are some really busybody 4-year-olds that maybe a family doesn't think that kid belongs in preschool yet, but they do have services that need to be met. It'd be nice if they can maintain that choice. My next question is, what is our transportation requirement for these students? Like, I know that we're looking forward to, we already have some buses that have the booster built in, but are we required to do that?
Whatever we're offering for the general population is what we have to be ready to provide. So if we're offering transportation services, we need to be ready to transport as needed, is my understanding. So, go ahead. Did I not say that?
No, you said it correctly, but I just want to clarify, though. So if, as a district, we decide we don't have the capacity to do pre-K transportation across the board, we're not under any obligation to provide pre-K transportation for students receiving FAPE. It's the moment that we're then offering universal transportation that we then would need to provide universal transportation and specialized transportation for students.
Even if that student only comes for speech?
Even if that student only comes for speech, we would be looking at that. So it's a decision we'll have to make, is whether or not we have that capacity to provide transportation for everybody.
Okay, so that question makes me wonder if when a student is enrolled in our pre-K program, like whether they're 3 or 4, Sue brought up the vaccination requirements. If somebody is coming into our building for 30 minutes a week, do we have to make sure, is that still going to apply? Okay. You don't have to comment further on that. I mean, it's
it's yes, and we still have lingering questions, and we're still continuing to meet. Again, next cohort 3 is a foot in the pool for 4-year-olds. It still gives us another year to learn what's going to be happening and how we're going to meet the needs of 3-year-olds.
Jess.
So just one more quick question now that you brought up transportation. Is that going to be also included with the whole CDS paying for it?
So for the special education side and the FAPE transition, yes. If that student needs, per their IEP, transportation, then that would be something the state would be funding. For the regular education students, no.
Anyone else? Grace?
Just a quick comment. I'm trying to remember when I was first in some conversations about trying to get this to happen. And it was 8 years ago, and those conversations had started prior to that. But that was my first involvement in hearing the ins and outs of this. And just hearing all of this evening, it's even more complex than I think any of us realized at that point in time. So yes, it's been a long time in coming. It will be good for kids. That's the bottom line. It's a ton of work and a lot of questions yet to be answered, and hopefully the funding that's needed for the students to have the services that they need, the children have the services that they need, will be there, as well as the staff. We will be able to hire the people we need. So again, just huge thank you for all of this.
We all set? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'll give them a second to climb back up on stage, and then we'll do policies. May I have a motion, please?
I move to approve the first reading of GCOA, Supervision and Evaluation of Professional Staff.
Second.
Public comment? Board discussion?
Oh, that's me. I apologize. I just had something pop up that said, do you want to erase this entire notebook? And then I wasn't paying attention to you anymore.
Fair.
I'm sorry. Okay, so GCOA, this policy is titled Supervision and Evaluation of Professional Staff. It's a required policy and part of our initiative to review all the required policies annually. It was last reviewed October of 2009. The purpose of this policy is to ensure that the school district has a consistent, fair, and effective system for supervising and evaluating professional staff to improve teaching quality and student learning. The policy established a systemic evaluation process. It does set some minimum expectations for evaluation frequency and ensures clarity, transparency, promotes professional growth and accountability, and designates the superintendent to duties, and lastly aligns with the Maine's educator effectiveness law and the Department of Education rules. Changes include designation by the superintendent of staff doing evaluations, not just immediate supervisor or administrator. So if at the discretion of the superintendent, there was someone else that was better qualified or appropriated to do the evaluation, that there was a discernment there that could be made. And struck language is not substantive to the director of the policy, but outlined the importance of evaluations just in concept. So it's just some preamble about the importance. I will note that after the first paragraph, if you actually look at the front page, there's a list of criteria. It starts at A, evaluative criteria. Right before that, there was, when I was doing my cross-reference to the legal on this one, a line that was missing. We'll make sure we put it in for the second read, but it should read in addition to that last sentence where it ends performance reviews, that probationary teachers shall in any event be evaluated at least once in each year of their probationary employment. So just a clerical error there. Apologize for that. Just checked with Mr. Howell on that's our current process in any case. So we'll add that one for the next read. Legal crosses of this policy are centered in 20A. Before I go into those, I'll also note that in my legal review of this policy, that Chapter 125 is crossed on the back, 402 or 4.02, pardon me, and 8.08. They're no longer listed in the current Chapter 125 reference. Mr. Howell and I spoke about this today in my review, and essentially we think that in 2019, when the DOE published this revision of chapters, that potentially it was repealed or just replaced. I couldn't find any record of repeal, but just that it was either renumbered, consolidated, or rephrased, and so that will be struck in the second read. Okay, so just to go back to the legal, Title 20A, we have a section 13802, which is teachers' principal evaluation models, 13201, which is education, teachers, and teacher employment. Under 1055 is the superintendent responsibilities, and then the main educator effectiveness law for 13701 to 706.
Questions? All those in favor? Motion carries. Next policy, please.
I move to approve the first reading of BE, School Board Meeting.
Second.
Public comment? Board discussion?
So this one's a lot simpler. BE Board of Directors meeting, our board chair requested that the committee look at some of the B policies. These are in board governance, not a required policy, so that's why they're being looked at now. It was last updated in June of 2009. Note the proposed title change to school board meetings. Changes to this policy include designating meeting times. Specifically, we added some language to clarify that workshops do not qualify for a meeting where formal action shall be taken. And we just removed the clarification in Robert's rules on adjournment of meetings as it's not required. And updating this policy will fit in concert with a number of these B policies that we will review and bring to you in subsequent meetings, as I alluded to earlier. Legal cross on this one is in the roles and responsibilities. So 28, 1001, right in our roles and responsibilities, and 1 MRSA 403 meetings to be open to the public.
So thank you, Jody, for prioritizing this and a couple others we're going to get to in the next few weeks. We had stated at the beginning of the year that we were working to get all of our outdated policies looked at, updated. This one's 16 years old. I will admit I am a little bit guilty of following past practice sometimes instead of what's written in the policy. So there was not a whole lot of substantial change here. I will point out that the whole section, location and board meetings, is struck. That does not mean that I or Marge have any intent on changing where our meetings are held, but it just it provided the flexibility of in the future if something necessitated a change, we didn't necessarily have to change the policy. And that was all I had on that. Joe.
Jody, sorry, I'm just noticing this now. It'd probably be good to cross 1 MRSA section 405 on executive sessions as well for the second read, where we reference that in the policy. It was a new ad, but we didn't add a legal cross about executive sessions. We can talk offline.
Oh yeah, I'm following you. So just add the cross on legal on that one. Yep, thank you.
And if I could just add one other suggestion that I just noticed. As a regional school unit, you are a board of directors and not necessarily a school board on the title.
Well, yeah, we did accept that change without discernment. Okay, thanks.
Anything else?
I missed that.
It's supposed to be the easy one. It's the purpose of a first read. We're doing great. Everyone's reading it.
All those in favor? Motion carries. I will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? We are adjourned. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for December 7th at Wyndham High School. Have a good night.